52 years ago, I moved with my family to Richmond, Virginia, from Huntington, West Virginia, to start a career with King's Dominion. This is a personal look back at what I experienced, not necessarily a historic account of the park's first years. Here's some photos, some stories about promoting and opening the park, some changes and events you may have heard of. This is a companion piece to a book I wrote, or a story book I wrote, about those first years. Thank you for watching this, and I hope you enjoy it. I started in January 1973 as the park's first public relations manager. Eventually, my duties expanded and changed over the years to include research, advertising, planning. I think I even was responsible for managing guest services at least one year. Here are two photos taken by a freelance photographer, Bob Llewellyn of Charlottesville. I hired him, and he would just shoot whatever he wanted because I knew I would get great photos like these that could be used then and for years and probably are still being used today. Construction had already started in January of 73, not looking like this, but just some empty fields and some ground moving around. Uh, Construction in those days required smart, experienced, and really hardworking guys. A lot of them came from Cincinnati, a lot of them from Richmond. Part of my job was photography. I took a lot of construction photos those first couple years before the park opened. We set up our first marketing offices, not at the park or on the construction site, but on Bird Avenue in Richmond. Tom Kempton had hired me. He was our first marketing director. These are the lost illustrations, I call them, of the four International Street buildings. I photoed them one day just to have them, and then later they were stolen out of Tom's car in Cincinnati. So this was the only record we had, at least of the renderings. Obviously, the construction drawings were retained and used in building these four buildings on International Street. It was decided to open the park a year early in April of 1974 with a drive-through Lion Country safari. Lion Country had existed in California, Florida, and right outside of Atlanta. So a lot of our early work in marketing was focused on the opening of the drive-through. We received a lot of publicity from the photos of the Cubs. I visited Lion Country in Atlanta. I took the lion photo that appeared on the cover of the Virginia State Magazine. The brochure is our first travel, or what we called our rack brochure. It was produced by our first advertising agency, Lawler Ballard Little, originally out of Norfolk, and then they opened a Richmond office. One of the things we did to get PR and good press for the opening of Lion Country was this event in Washington at Dulles Airport. We sent a telegram to the DC area media. We said that a big group of dignitaries were going to land, the biggest group that had ever landed at Dulles. Uh, and what they were the white rhinos, and that they were going to be brought to the park. We tracked the flight. It came out of South Africa, and they kept me informed as they came across the ocean. And I knew when to alert the media, when to be there, when the flight would land. The media ate it up. They took photos, they did TV reports. I got a little trouble with the customs people because they wanted to get on the plane and start taking pictures before everything had gone through customs. So it was a pretty big TV event and PR event. One of the things our promotion department did was we created a traveling bird show, trained bird show that went to events and shopping malls prior to opening. Gary Price was the trainer, and he was also in hand for the Lion Country opening in the theater that we built down close to Lake Charles. Lion Country Safari at Kings Dominion opened with a drive-through, and we had a Safari Village theme section as a preview of what Kings Dominion was going to be like. We had the Scooby Doo coaster, the Hungry Hippo restaurant, we had a gift shop called the Elephant's Trunk, and we had a preview theater where we showed a movie called To Build a Happy Place. It was actually filmed at Kings Island. And of course, all this was big publicity. We did a lot of advertising around it. And by later in 1975, the monorail was put in, and it really replaced the drive-through. As PR manager, I needed really good photography, and photography was really important to tell the story of the park. I hired a Richmond photographer who also worked for the Richmond newspaper. His name was Pert Gormus. He became a lifelong friend. He was willing to, when the tower was being built, to go up via the construction crane, a small little platform. When he got up there, he had to walk across a small girder, And many of those early aerial type shots of construction that you can see or have seen in the park were probably shot for him that day. In addition to taking a lot of folks myself, I hired seasonal photographers, including my friend Clement Brent. And photographers were essential to gaining publicity as portrayed what a theme park would be to markets that were just unfamiliar with theme parks or with a place that King's Dominion was going to be like. We did a lot of pre-opening PR events, usually on site at the park. One thing we did early on was we held a preview day for the media. We had them come out, had them walk around, we showed them some renderings of what the park was going to be like. And then we also had other events. One of the things we did one time, we hosted when the Rebel Yell was finished, we had the Virginia State Senate come out and write it on a really cold day. We also hosted the Richmond newspapers were sponsoring the USA and USSR track meet. So we had the USSR track team come out and we gave them a tour of the park, and that was a lot of fun. The topping of the tower was really an event where we invited guests. We had the media come out and we had people sign the last piece going up. Uh, and we always tried to do, working with our ad agencies, really creative invitations, try to grab attention and make sure that it sounded like it was going to be a lot of fun, but also had a lot of reason for them to show up. I think there's always been a lot of confusion about when the park actually opened and what happened. We opened May 3rd, 1975. We had a nice crowd of about 20,000 people. We had a McDonald's promotion going on that you could go to McDonald's, get a coupon that was good for $2.50 off the admission price back then, believe it or not, was only $7.50. Um, it was good that and we had a nice crowd and we kind of got some to do some good things, and that was just our opening day. We were going to have a grand opening then closer to 3 weeks later after the promotion had expired. The next weekend, May 10th, May 11th, was Mother's Day, and because I think a combination of the coupons and Mother's Day, we estimated, and there was really no way to track it because we just took people's $5 and let them in the park. It was estimated we had about 50,000 or 60,000 people came that day. We closed the park before noon. The state police estimated that another amount, at least that large, was on the highways they had to turn away. Needless to say, it was very busy, very hectic. And as some people said, we actually closed before we ever opened. Technically not right, but technically yes. We opened the park and closed before we even ever had our grand opening. The grand opening was on May 24th. We went ahead and extended those coupons to be good for a longer period of time. And uh, we didn't ever have a bad news after that. Really, people still came that first year, but we always wondered how many people were very disappointed they couldn't get in that first day or that second weekend, I guess I'd say. Once the park opened, we did a variety of events and various ways to get publicity over those first couple years. I got the opportunity to appear on the CBS Evening News with Dan Rather, being interviewed about the popularity of American theme parks. We scheduled Bill Hanna of Hanna-Barbera and a voice actor by the name of Dawes Butler for PR appearances in Richmond and elsewhere. Bill even Hanna appeared on TV on a show called To Tell the Truth. We staged two roller coaster marathons. The second year, the three contestants were still running after 160 hours. They could get 5 minutes per hour on a break, and so they could accumulate rest time. So if they run for 3 hours, they could be off for 15 minutes. And it appeared after 160 hours, these three gentlemen were going to go forever. So we just said, look, well, let's declare them the three the winners, and we'll pay them the cash prize. I can't even remember how much it was. Another time I paid for a photographer. He wanted to use a cherry picker to get a photo of the King Cobra ride and to get right inside and get this great shot. So I said, sure, I'll pay for it out of my PR funds. And he got this great photo, and we made the cover of Fortune magazine, which at the time was probably one of the biggest financial magazines in the world. To continue to draw more guests and to make their experiences even better, several changes and additions were made during those first several years. We had originally started with the Coney Island area down by the lake with most of the thriller rides. And it was based on the same area at Kings Island in Cincinnati, but the Coney Island name in this area didn't quite have the same cachet that it would have had in Cincinnati. So it was renamed Candy Apple Grove. And the apple turnover was added. We added the King Cobra in 1977. And one of the things we did when we studied in-park spending, and we knew that International Street was a great place when you entered the park, but the stores and restaurants were deserted most of the day, especially during the daytime. So we had a plan. We added a swinging ship to the east side and a 360 theater to the west. It was also recommended, and it was accepted. We said, "Why don't we let's soften the look and feel of the street because it was just a hot runway that led people just to go on to the rest of the park and not come back up." So the result was recurbing and planting of trees that today really makes it a great place. We offered a ride called the Grizzly. It increased our offer of more rides, and we positioned ourselves against Busch Gardens by, with things by saying, "Bet you can't do it all," to try to emphasize that we had more rides and more thrilling rides than those folks down in Williamsburg. The biggest change, the biggest addition to the park was the Lost World Mountain. It added three new rides to the park. The first was the Doozies, which were to the small train ride that went through the mountain itself. We had a water ride called the Voyage to Atlantis. It gave us a dark ride, which we did not have at the time. The voyage was also rethemed to the haunted river after the first year. It was a lot of fun. To the grand opening night, we were really the park was really hustling to get everything done, and the flume boats coming out of there with our VIPs on that night started floating out of the channel, and they were kind of free into the lake and the pond there. Our great rides employees, they got in the water and they guided those VIP boats back to the loading station. And a lot of those VIPs came up to us afterwards and said, "Wow, that was a great touch. I mean, that's amazing that you do that on that ride." They didn't realize the issue was that we weren't quite ready to open some of those rides right away. It was a national television TV show. It was based out of Baltimore. It's called Romper Room. So we had an agreement with them that we did through our PR group, and we did an agreement to film several episodes of the park. We paid for the production of them. They needed children to be in the show, so we had park employees' children to be sort of extras for the show. And my daughter Kimberly is in some of these. She's the one in the blue T-shirt. There was always a great deal of pressure to do more attendance to increase revenue. It was constant. It was there every year. It was there all year, and so we did a lot of different things to try to increase that enjoyment of the park, as well as to increase the amount of people that come each year, and how rapidly people would return. We did an agreement with Kings Island for Dick Van Dyke to appear in our TV commercials. A friend from Kings Island and I, we served as his escort while they were doing that. Um, and it was a lot of fun working with him. Later, one of the things that we did, I think, as the live shows did, we introduced a show in the Mason Dixon Theater. It was actually the second show during the day. It was later in the day, and it was called Rock Around the Clock, and it was a big hit. It had an amazing cast. It was a uh, great score. One time when I was working with Universal Studios, the live shows people there told me that they remembered that show and thought it was one of the best, in-park shows that they'd ever seen. We started doing concerts, and one of the concerts we did was with Andy Gibb. He had just started to become popular, and the teenagers just mobbed us, and we had to open the gates early to make sure nobody got basically pinned up against and trampled. And it was quite a day. And our security people will tell you they worked really hard that day, as they did most days. We did a promotion my friend Stuart Sanders created called September Thrills. It had probably one of the best ads or posters I've ever seen for a theme park. It was just beautiful. It featured a variety of acts and things. We had the famous high wire artist Carl Walenda walk the wire over International Street. We had a magician called the Amazing Randy. We had Hugo Zucchini, the Human Cannonball, and it was really popular. And it was really designed because what would happen in September was a lot of people would get busy with back to school events and things on their homes, and they just, they kind of got out of the summer theme park attitude. Uh, in November of 1976, we thought, our weather the previous November had pretty nice, so maybe we should stay open in November. And we had had great weather the year before. Unfortunately, November of '76 was really cold, and some mornings it was below 25 degrees when we were trying to open. So we canceled the rest of the month of November and didn't try that again. One summer day, four gentlemen introduced themselves to me from Universal Studios, and they were going around the country looking at various theme parks to be the site for filming of a movie. I liked the idea. It sounded like we would get some pretty good publicity. It'd be a major motion picture. Uh, and they said, yeah, they would love to come back in September and start filming. And I think from that day on, or a little bit after that, I think almost worked full time on that to make sure that filming and that movie, came off. During filming, uh, I had two radios. One was for park operations, and one was for the film crew. So they'd be ready to shoot a scene, and I would tell rides when to start and stop a ride that would always, show in the background. I met every day and night with the crew to plan the next day's filming. Howard Kazanchian, who was later producer for two of the three original Star Wars movies, was on site as an assistant producer. And at one point, he tried to talk me into coming to Los Angeles, go to film school, apply for the Directors Guild apprentice program. And, it just sounded too risky, to me. Uh, he kind of introduced the idea that, hey, he was going to go back and do some movies with a college friend of his by the name of George Lucas. But it just sounded a little too risky for me. And I guess I would just have to say, oh, well. Even though I had spent a lot of time with the crew and they appreciated everything that I did, they couldn't actually give me credit in the uh, credits for the movie. There were some legal issues because I was actually still working for King's Dominion, and King's Dominion actually received a fee from Universal Studios for the use of the park. But my family was there, and we actually we had to quickly appear one time in the background. They were filming a scene in the children's area, and they didn't have enough extras, so I was there with my wife and two children, and they said, "Quick, get walk through the scene in the background." So you'll see in one place my me holding my son, and my wife was pushing a stroller with my daughter. One of the fun things is they paid them as extras, and so their Social Security earnings when they look at their when they get ready to retire sometime is going to show that their first jobs were extras for Universal Studios on a movie called Roller Coaster. There's a picture there of my son being held being by a guy by the name of Ed Milkovich, who later became a very successful TV producer. At the time he was just getting his career started. I think one of the most enjoyable aspects of when they filmed that movie was working with a friendly and appreciative cast and crew. You can sort of see George Siegel, who starred in it, uh, with my wife, and then there's a scene there. There's a picture there that shows his wife was shooting home movies. She shot some of me filming her, and her family and my wife. My kids got to be there, whether they were tired, whether they were becoming rebel yell riders or my son sitting on George Siegel's daughter's lap in my office. I had three opportunities when I was involved with King's Dominion for park attractions that were just never to be. The first was when I pitched and had an agreement with the International Motorsports Hall of Fame to locate their facility to park, but we declined to do it because Kings Island had opened the College Football Hall of Fame and it wasn't doing very well. So our higher ups in our corporate offices thought that this, motorsports stock car racing thing wouldn't be that popular. Uh, Obviously, it would be very popular later on, and places around the country would bid millions of dollars to try to locate it. The second was I went to when I was in Los Angeles. I met with Rafael De Laurentiis of the famous movie producers, and they had just done the King Kong movie, and we secured the rights for the large mechanical King Kong that was used in the movie. But then when we got back to Richmond and started thinking about it, uh, one of their requirements were that they wanted their union crews to reconstruct this thing, and realized it was going to cost a lot of money, and that we would have no control over redoing it. Obviously, later on, that same King Kong was became a very popular attraction at Universal Studios in California and in Florida. The third was kind of a surprise on a weekend one time when I was on duty. I had a call and representative of Universal Studios. This was before the park was ever built in Florida, and they were looking for somewhere on the East Coast to sort of build an attraction. So we went out and we with this representative. I went out with this representative, and we went back through some of the unused areas of the park. Uh, and the idea would we would sort of share some property, and they could build an attraction there, or we would do a joint venture type thing. And, obviously, later on, they decided to just go ahead and build a whole new attraction in Florida, which today is, an amazing, property if you've never been there. And of course, I was fortunate enough later on to work with them as a consultant for 12 years. When you work full time for a place like King's Dominion, particularly, it's a great place for families, and so your family, your children, spend a lot of time at the park. My daughter Kimberly and my son Brian were no exceptions. From kiddie rides to wearing park apparel, they had a great time, and I think they still love their time that they spent there as youngsters. The photo at the top on this page is our early administrative management crew. Some great people in there, some great theme park people, some great friends. Our first general manager on the far right, lower right hand corner, Gary Woggs. Obviously, Denny Spiegel in the middle became the general manager. Later we had some other great managers during my time: Lou Hooper, Wilson Floor, Jim Cobb, a great finance guy, and the list goes on and on and on. I mean, I could just go probably name 50 to 100 people who were really, important in my time, as well as people who worked, for me, as administrative staff, photographers, just some really great people who, they not only embraced the job, but I think they also embraced the mission of providing this great place of, fun and entertainment. I thought it'd be interesting to try to make a list of some of those people, and as you can see, there were a lot of people. Some of them were seasonal, some of them were people that worked for me on the research side of the business. But I think the reason I'd list all these people here is to really just to thank all of them in small ways and big ways. They all helped me. Every one of these people on this list helped me in some way over those first 10 years. So, in conclusion, I think you could see the first 10 years were exciting, they were interesting, uh, sometimes frustrating, but always made more enjoyable by knowing that millions of people were being entertained and having that opportunity to get away from everyday problems and frustrations to come to a place. So here's to another 50 years as Kings Dominion celebrates its 50 years of existence. One of the early things that one of our great copywriters came up with was this idea that it was really streets of magic, rides of laughter, and a tower of dreams. And then the really challenge of just having fun and, bet you just can't do it all. So here's to the King's Dominion. And I appreciate your time and tape for watching this. Thank you.